She hadn't stood in over 2 years. The wheelchair had become her world, her prison, her identity. But as the homeless boy she'd fallen in love with whispered "I do" and kissed her at their wedding altar, something impossible began to happen. A tingling, a warmth, a sensation she'd been told she'd never feel again. With 200 witnesses holding their breath, Lily Carter Santos did the unthinkable. She stood up from her wheelchair for the first time since the accident that stole her dreams. But this miracle didn't happen overnight. It began months earlier when her custom wheelchair broke down in the wrong neighborhood, and a 17-year-old boy with healing hands said 3 words that changed everything: "Let me try." If you're ready to discover how a surgeon's daughter and a homeless healer defied every prejudice, every obstacle, and every medical impossibility to find love that literally moves mountains, hit subscribe, tell me where you're watching from, and prepare for a story that will restore your faith in miracles. Now let's go back to where it all began. The morning sun filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Dr. Jonathan Carter's penthouse, casting geometric shadows across the polished hardwood floors. In the center of the spacious living room, 22-year-old Lily Carter sat motionless in her custom wheelchair, staring at the physical therapy equipment her father had installed, equipment that remained as untouched as the day it arrived 6 months ago. "Lily, sweetheart, Dr. Morrison is here for your session," her father's voice carried from the hallway, tinged with the same forced optimism that had colored every conversation since the accident. She didn't turn around. "Tell him I'm not feeling well." "You said that yesterday, and the day before." Dr. Carter appeared in her peripheral vision, his surgical scrubs replaced by expensive casual wear, but his eyes still held the same exhaustion she'd seen every day for the past 18 months. "The neural stimulation therapy could help if you just could." Lily's voice was flat, emotionless. "Might, possibly." "I'm tired of maybes, Dad." The silence stretched between them like a chasm. Dr. Jonathan Carter had performed thousands of surgeries, saved countless lives, but he couldn't fix his own daughter. The irony wasn't lost on either of them. "What do you think hurts more, losing the ability to walk or watching your loved ones struggle to help you?" Share your thoughts in the comments below. 3 miles across the city, in the shadow of an abandoned warehouse, 17-year-old River Santos knelt beside Mrs. Elena, an elderly woman whose weathered hands shook as she tried to unwrap a moldy sandwich. "Here, let me help," River said softly, his voice carrying a gentleness that seemed impossible for someone who'd spent the last 4 years surviving on the streets. Mrs. Elena looked up at him with cloudy eyes. "My arthritis is acting up again, Micho. Feels like fire in these old bones." River glanced around the makeshift camp of cardboard shelters and tarps, ensuring no one was watching, then gently placed his hands over hers. A warmth seemed to flow from his palms, not visible, but somehow real. Mrs. Elena's breathing deepened, and slowly the tension in her face eased. "Better?" he asked, pulling his hands away quickly. She flexed her fingers, wonder crossing her features. "How do you—" "Just good at massage," River interrupted, standing abruptly. He couldn't explain what he didn't understand it himself. All he knew was that sometimes, when people were in pain, his touch seemed to help. But he'd learned to keep this ability hidden. In his world, being different meant being vulnerable. Back in the penthouse, Dr. Carter was losing his patience with his daughter's resistance. "Lily, you can't spend the rest of your life in this chair feeling sorry for yourself." The words hung in the air like a slap. Lily's hands clenched the armrests of her wheelchair so tightly her knuckles went white. "Feeling sorry for myself?" Her voice rose for the first time in months. "I'm 22 years old, Dad. I was supposed to start medical school. I was supposed to dance at my wedding. I was supposed to run marathons and climb mountains and—" her voice cracked. "I was supposed to walk." Tears she'd refused to shed for weeks finally spilled over. Dr. Carter moved toward her, but she held up a hand. "Don't, please, just don't." He stood frozen, this man who could steady his hands through 12-hour surgeries but couldn't figure out how to comfort his own child. Meanwhile, River was walking through the city's nicer neighborhoods, scavenging for recyclables to trade for food. He'd learned these areas had the best discards, but he also had to be careful. His dark skin and worn clothes made him a target for suspicious glances and police attention. As he turned a corner near the medical district, he saw a small crowd gathered around something. His curiosity overrode his usual caution, and he moved closer. An elderly man had collapsed on the sidewalk, clutching his chest. People stood around helplessly, someone calling 911, but River could see the man's lips turning blue. Without thinking, River pushed through the crowd and knelt beside the man. "Sir, can you hear me?" "Hey kid, get back," someone shouted. "The paramedics are coming." But River was already placing his hands on the man's chest, feeling for the irregular rhythm of his heart. That familiar warmth began to flow from his palms, and slowly the man's breathing steadied. His color returned. When the paramedics arrived minutes later, the man was sitting up, confused but stable. "What happened here?" the lead paramedic asked. River had already melted back into the crowd, disappearing before anyone could point him out. But Dr. Carter, who had been walking to his car after leaving the hospital, had seen the entire thing from across the street. He stared after the retreating figure of the young black man in the worn hoodie, his medical mind trying to process what he'd witnessed. It should have been impossible. Yet the evidence was undeniable. Somehow that boy had helped save a man's life with nothing but his bare hands. Back at the penthouse, Lily sat alone in her room, staring at a framed photo from her college graduation. In it, she was standing, radiant, confident, full of dreams that now felt like they belonged to someone else. She set the photo face down on her nightstand. Some things were too painful to remember. River returned to his makeshift shelter as the sun began to set, his stomach empty, but his heart strangely full. He'd helped someone today, really helped them. For a moment, his gift hadn't felt like a burden but like a purpose. But as he settled onto his cardboard bed, the harsh reality of his situation settled back in. Tomorrow he'd wake up homeless, hungry, and alone. No amount of mysterious ability could heal that fundamental truth. Both Lily and River fell asleep that night, she in her expensive bed, he on the cold concrete, unaware that their worlds were about to collide in ways that would change everything they thought they knew about healing, hope, and love. The city hummed around them, 8 million people living separate lives, but fate was already weaving the threads that would bring them together. Sometimes miracles came disguised as chance encounters. Sometimes healing required breaking open first. And sometimes the most unlikely people held the keys to each other's salvation. 3 days later, Lily made a decision that would change everything. She'd been staring at the same 4 walls for 72 hours, her father's worried glances becoming unbearable. The physical therapist had come and gone again, leaving behind pamphlets about adaptive living that felt like surrender disguised as hope. "I need air," she announced suddenly, wheeling herself toward the elevator. Dr. Carter looked up from his medical journals, startled. "Lily, where are you going?" "Out." It was the first time she'd left the penthouse voluntarily since the accident. "I'll drive you." "No." The word came out sharper than she intended. I need to remember what the world feels like." Her father's face cycled through a dozen emotions: relief, worry, hope, fear. Finally, he nodded. "Take your phone, stay in safe areas." And Lily, his voice caught, "Please be careful." She wheeled herself to the private elevator, her heart hammering against her ribs. Freedom felt both exhilarating and terrifying. The city streets assaulted her senses in ways she'd forgotten. Car horns, diesel fumes, the constant buzz of humanity moving with purpose she no longer possessed. Her custom wheelchair handled the sidewalks smoothly, but after 20 minutes she realized she'd taken a wrong turn somewhere. The neighborhood had shifted around her without her noticing. Gone were the manicured storefronts and wide, clean sidewalks. Here, graffiti tagged brick walls, and the few people she passed avoided eye contact. Her wheelchair suddenly felt less like mobility and more like a neon sign advertising her vulnerability. She reached for her phone to call her father, but her hands were shaking. The simple act of asking for help felt like admitting defeat all over again. That's when her worst fears materialized, a grinding sound from her left wheel, followed by a mechanical pop. The wheelchair lurched to one side and stopped dead. "No, no, no." Lily's voice cracked as she tried to move forward. The wheel was completely locked. She was stranded. River had been walking back from the community center where he sometimes volunteered, helping serve meals to other homeless individuals. He'd taken this route because it was quieter, fewer people to stare at him with suspicion or pity. When he spotted the young woman in the expensive wheelchair, clearly distressed and out of place, every instinct told him to keep walking. People like her didn't want help from people like him. He'd learned that lesson repeatedly. But something about the way she held herself, proud despite her obvious fear, made him pause. Lily sensed someone approaching and looked up, her body tensing. A young black man in a worn hoodie was walking toward her, and every privileged, prejudiced warning her upbringing had embedded in her subconscious flared to life. "Stay away from me," she said, her voice sharper than she intended. River stopped about 10 feet away, hands visible and non-threatening. "Your wheel's jammed," he said simply. "I can see that." Lily's grip tightened on her phone. "I've already called for help." It was a lie, and somehow River knew it. "Look, I'm not going to hurt you," he said, his voice gentle but tired. "But that wheel's not going to fix itself, and this isn't the safest neighborhood to be stranded in." Lily stared at him, her heart racing. Everything she'd been taught about stranger danger, about people from bad neighborhoods, everything her privileged bubble had taught her, screamed at her to refuse. But her wheelchair wasn't moving, and dusk was approaching. River watched the internal war playing out on her face and recognized it. He'd seen that look before, the moment when people's need for help battled their fear of him. "I work on mechanical stuff sometimes," he offered quietly. "Bikes, shopping carts. Wheelchairs aren't that different." The silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken tensions about race, class, and trust. Finally, Lily's pragmatic side won. "Fine, but keep your distance." River nodded and approached slowly, like he was approaching a wounded animal. He knelt beside the wheelchair, careful not to get too close to her. "Looks like something got caught in the brake mechanism," he said, examining the wheel. "I can probably free it, but I'll need to touch the chair." Just fix it," Lily whispered. River's hands worked with surprising gentleness, his long fingers probing the mechanical parts with the skill of someone who'd learned to fix everything himself because no one else would. As he worked, Lily found herself studying his face, the concentration, the way he bit his lower lip when focused, the kindness in his eyes that contradicted everything she'd assumed about him. "There," River said, and the wheel moved freely. "Should be fine now." He started to stand, but something made him pause. Maybe it was the way she was looking at him, or maybe it was the pain he recognized in her eyes. The same pain he saw in his reflection every morning. "Can I ask you something?" River said softly. Lily tensed. "What?" "The paralysis. It's not just your legs, is it? It's everywhere. I can see it." The words hit her like a physical blow. "You don't know anything about me." "I know what giving up looks like," River replied quietly. I know what it feels like to be trapped in something you can't control. Tears Lily hadn't realized were building spilled over. You can't possibly understand. River was quiet for a long moment. Then, almost without thinking, he said something that would change both their lives forever. Let me try. The three words hung in the air between them, loaded with impossible implications. Try what? Lily whispered. River looked at his hands, then back at her. I can't explain it, but sometimes, when people are hurting, I can help. Not always. Maybe not at all. But he met her eyes. Let me try. Every rational thought in Lily's head screamed, no. This was insane. He was a stranger. This was dangerous. But something in his eyes, a mixture of hope and desperation that mirrored her own, made her nod. What do you need me to do? She asked, her voice barely audible. Just don't pull away. River moved closer, kneeling beside her wheelchair. Slowly, carefully, he reached for her hand. The moment his skin touched hers, something extraordinary happened. Warmth. Not just physical warmth, but something deeper, more profound. It started in her fingertips and radiated up her arm like liquid sunlight. For the first time in 18 months, Lily felt something. Not movement, not sensation in her legs, but a tingling awareness that seemed to awaken parts of her spirit she'd thought were dead forever. River's eyes widened. He could feel it too, a connection, an energy that flowed between them like nothing he'd ever experienced. His gift had never felt this strong, this alive. Do you feel that? He whispered. Lily stared at their joined hands in wonder. They sat there for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. This impossible connection bridging every difference between them. Then a car backfired nearby, and they both jumped apart. Reality crashed back in. Lily looked at River with a mixture of awe and terror, while he stared at his own hands like they belonged to someone else. I should go, River said quietly, the moment's magic evaporating in the face of their different worlds. Wait, Lily started, but he was already walking away, leaving her with 1,000 questions and the lingering warmth of impossibility. She watched him disappear around the corner, her heart hammering. Whatever had just happened defied everything she knew about medicine, about healing, about hope itself. But for the first time since her accident, Lily Carter felt truly alive. Lily sat frozen in her wheelchair for 10 full minutes after River disappeared, staring at the hand he'd touched. The warmth had faded, but the memory of it burned like a brand against her palm. She flexed her fingers, searching for any lingering trace of that impossible sensation. It was nothing, she told herself firmly. Adrenaline, fear, maybe low blood sugar. But even as she wheeled herself toward home, taking a deliberately different route to avoid any chance of seeing him again, she couldn't shake the image of his eyes, the way they'd widened with the same shock and wonder she'd felt. Coincidence, placebo effect, desperation making me imagine things. The medical explanations her father had drilled into her since childhood came flooding back, rational thoughts building walls against the inexplicable hope trying to bloom in her chest. By the time she reached the penthouse, Lily had convinced herself it meant nothing. Almost 3 miles away, River was running. Not jogging, not walking fast. Full out running through the maze of alleyways he knew by heart, his breath coming in ragged gasps that had nothing to do with physical exertion and everything to do with the panic clawing at his chest. What the hell was that? He'd helped people before. Eased Mrs. Elena's arthritis, calmed crying babies, even helped that man having a heart attack. But this, what happened with the girl in the wheelchair? This was different. Stronger, more intense than anything he'd ever experienced. And the way she'd looked at him in that moment, like he was something more than just another street kid to be feared or pitied, River stopped running and leaned against a brick wall, sliding down until he was sitting on the dirty pavement. His hands were shaking. "She's not your world," he reminded himself harshly. "Rich girl, fancy wheelchair, daddy probably has more money than you've ever seen. Whatever that was, it doesn't change anything." But his palms still tingled with the memory of her skin, and for the first time in years, River Santos was afraid, not of being hungry or cold or alone, but of hoping for something that could never be his. "You went where?" Dr. Carter's voice echoed through the penthouse like a thunderclap. Lily had made the mistake of being honest when he asked about her outing. Well, mostly honest. She'd mentioned the wheelchair malfunction and getting help from a local resident, conveniently omitting the part about impossible warmth and healing touches. "It wasn't that bad, Dad. I handled it." "Lily, that neighborhood, do you have any idea what could have happened? You could have been robbed, assaulted, or worse." He was pacing now, his surgeon's composure cracking. "And this person who helped you, describe them." Something in his tone made her wary. "Why does it matter?" "They fixed my wheelchair and left." "Because I need to know if we should call the police." "The police?" Lily's voice shot up an octave. "Dad, he helped me." "He?" The single word carried a weight of assumption that made Lily's stomach clench. She knew that tone, had heard it whispered at country club dinners and charity galas, the coded language of her privileged world. "A young man helped me with my wheelchair, that's all." Dr. Carter stopped pacing and looked at her directly. What did he look like? Lily hesitated, knowing exactly where this was leading. "Does it matter?" "Lily." The warning in her father's voice was clear. She sighed in defeat. "Black, probably late teens. Wearing a hoodie." She left out the part about his gentle hands and kind eyes, the way he'd knelt beside her wheelchair without making her feel helpless. Dr. Carter's expression hardened. "Jesus, Lily. Do you understand how dangerous that situation was? A young black male in that neighborhood, approaching a disabled woman alone? He wasn't dangerous." The words came out louder than she'd intended. He was gentle and smart, and he knew exactly what was wrong with my wheelchair. "That's what worries me." Her father's voice dropped to that controlled tone he used when delivering bad news to families. How did he know so much about medical equipment? Why was he so eager to help? Each question felt like a slap, reducing River's kindness to something sinister and calculated. "You're being paranoid." "I'm being realistic. Promise me you won't go back to that area. Promise me if you see him again, you'll call security immediately." Lily stared at her father, this man she'd always looked up to, and saw something that made her stomach turn. Fear, yes, but something uglier underneath it, the kind of prejudice that dressed itself up as protection. "Fine," she lied. "I promise." But as she wheeled herself to her room, Lily found herself angry in a way she hadn't felt since the accident. Angry at her father's assumptions, angry at the world that taught her to fear kindness based on someone's skin color, and angry at herself for almost believing it. Because the truth was, in those moments when River had touched her hand, she'd felt safer than she had in months. Not just physically, but emotionally, like someone finally saw her as more than her disability, more than her limitations. "But maybe that's exactly why it's dangerous," a small voice whispered in her head. "Maybe hoping is the most dangerous thing of all." River couldn't sleep that night. He lay on his cardboard bed in the abandoned warehouse, staring at the ceiling and trying to forget the way the rich girl's hand had felt in his. He'd replayed the encounter a dozen times, analyzing every word, every gesture, looking for the moment when everything would make sense. It never came. "You're thinking too loud, hermano," came a voice from across the makeshift shelter. Diego, an older man who'd been on the streets for 15 years, was propped up on one elbow, watching River with knowing eyes. "Can't turn it off," River admitted. "Woman trouble." River almost laughed. "Something like that. Let me guess, she's from a different world. Rich, pretty, probably never had to worry about where her next meal was coming from." The accuracy of the assessment made River wince. "How'd you know?" "Because you got that look men get when they're falling for someone they can't have." Diego's voice was gentle but firm. "Take it from someone who's been there, some bridges ain't meant to be crossed, mijo. Save yourself the heartbreak." River wanted to argue, to explain that it wasn't about romance or attraction, it was about something deeper, more fundamental. But how could he explain the connection he'd felt, the way his gift had responded to her in ways that defied everything he understood about himself? "She's paralyzed," he said quietly. "And you think you can fix her?" The question hung in the air like an accusation. Did he think he could fix her? Was that what this was about? Some savior complex, some need to prove his worth by healing someone society had written off? "I don't know," River whispered. "Then stay away," Diego said, not unkindly. "Trust me, kid. Some kinds of hope will kill you." But as River finally drifted off to sleep near dawn, his last thought wasn't about the impossibility of their different worlds or the danger of hoping for too much. It was about the way Lily had said, "I feel that," in a voice full of wonder, like she was rediscovering what it meant to be alive. And despite every rational argument against it, despite Diego's warnings and his own fears, River knew he couldn't just walk away from that, even if it destroyed him. Have you ever felt a connection with someone that defied all logic and social expectations? Sometimes the heart knows things the mind can't explain. What do you think River should do next? Tell us in the comment. Both Lily and River spent the following day trying to return to their normal routines, she in her penthouse prison, he on the unforgiving streets. But normalcy felt like wearing clothes that no longer fit. They were both running from the same impossible truth that in a single moment a stranger had awakened something in them they'd thought was dead forever. And no amount of denial could make that feeling disappear. The question was, how long could they resist what their hearts already knew? The emergency alert pierced through the city at 3:47 p.m. on a Tuesday that had started like any other. Severe weather warning. Major electrical storm system approaching. Widespread power outages expected. All residents in flood-prone areas report to designated emergency shelters immediately. Lily was in the middle of another futile physical therapy session when the lights flickered and died. Her penthouse, with its floor-to-ceiling windows, suddenly felt like a glass prison suspended 40 floors above a city plunging into chaos. "Dad," she called out, but the emergency lighting revealed he wasn't home. A note on the kitchen counter explained he'd been called into the hospital for emergency surgeries. Outside, the sky had turned an ominous green-black, and the wind was already howling between the buildings with a sound that made her skin crawl. Her phone buzzed with a text, "Power grid failing citywide. Hospital on backup generators. Get to emergency shelter now. Love you. Mayas. Dad." For a moment, Lily considered staying put. The penthouse felt safer than venturing out into the storm. But as lightning split the sky and the building swayed slightly in the wind, she realized her glass cage might become a death trap. 20 minutes later, she was wheeling through increasingly chaotic streets toward the closest designated shelter, the same community center she'd accidentally passed 3 days ago when her wheelchair broke down. The same neighborhood where she'd met River. River had been helping elderly residents from the low-income housing complex evacuate when the storm hit in earnest. The city's emergency protocol was clear: everyone in flood zone areas needed to get to higher ground immediately. He'd made 3 trips back and forth, carrying belongings for people who couldn't manage them alone, making sure Mrs. Elena had her medications and that the Martinez family's baby had enough formula. Now, as he helped the last group of evacuees through the doors of the community center, River was soaked to the bone and exhausted. The shelter was already packed wall to wall with people from every corner of the neighborhood, families with crying children, elderly folks clutching photo albums, teenagers trying to look tough while their eyes showed fear. He was scanning the room for somewhere to settle when he saw her. Lily sat near the entrance, looking completely out of place in her expensive clothes and pristine wheelchair. Her dark hair was plastered to her head from the rain, and she was clutching her purse like a lifeline while staring at the crowd with barely concealed panic. Their eyes met across the room, and River saw the exact moment she recognized him. Her face cycled through surprise, fear, and something that might have been relief. Before he could decide whether to approach or disappear into the crowd, a commotion erupted near the far wall. An elderly man was clutching his chest, hyperventilating as he collapsed onto a folding chair. River was moving before he consciously decided to, pushing through the crowd toward the medical emergency. But as he knelt beside the man, he heard a voice behind him. "Check his pulse, left wrist, 2 fingers, don't use your thumb." He turned to find Lily had somehow navigated her wheelchair through the packed crowd. She was leaning forward, her medical knowledge taking over. "You know first aid?" River asked, his hands finding the man's pulse as she'd instructed. "Pre-med, before," she gestured vaguely at her legs. "His breathing is too shallow, panic attack maybe, but we need to rule out cardiac issues." River felt that familiar warmth building in his palms, but with Lily watching, he hesitated. His gift was his secret, and exposing it here, in front of all these people. "What are you waiting for?" Lily asked urgently. "You helped that man on the street the other day. I saw you from across the road. My father saw it too." River's hands stilled. "Your father saw. He's Dr. Jonathan Carter at Metropolitan General. He said what you did was impossible, but the man recovered." Her eyes met his. "So whatever you did 3 days ago with me, whatever this is you can do, this man needs it." The permission in her voice, the trust, broke down his last resistance. River placed his hands on the elderly man's chest, feeling for the erratic rhythm of his heart. The warmth flowed from his palms, and slowly the man's breathing steadied. "Better?" River asked softly. The man nodded, color returning to his cheeks. "Thank you, son, both of you." As River helped the man to a more comfortable spot, he became aware that several other people were watching them, not with suspicion, but with hope. A mother approached with a feverish toddler. An teenager limped over, favoring an obviously sprained ankle. "I can't heal everyone," River whispered to Lily, feeling overwhelmed. "You don't have to heal them," she replied quietly. "But you can help them feel less alone." Over the next several hours, as the storm raged outside and the shelter grew more crowded, something extraordinary happened. River and Lily found themselves working as a team, she providing medical knowledge and a calming presence, he offering his mysterious gift and an understanding of the shelter population that her privileged background couldn't provide. She helped a scared teenager understand that his panic attacks weren't a sign of weakness. River eased the arthritis pain of several elderly evacuees, allowing them to sleep despite the hard floors and uncomfortable conditions. "You're good at this," Lily told him during a brief break, watching him help a family find space for their sleeping bags. "Good at what?" "Caring for people. You have instincts that can't be taught." She paused. "Have you ever thought about formal medical training?" River's laugh was bitter. "Right. A homeless kid with no high school diploma becoming a doctor. That's realistic. Stranger things have happened." Lily's voice was quiet but firm. "My father, he grew up poor too. Worked his way through college, medical school. It's possible. Your father would probably call security if he saw us talking." Lily was quiet for a long moment. "Maybe. But that says more about his fears than your worth." The honesty in her voice made River look at her. Really look. This wasn't the scared, entitled girl he'd met 3 days ago. This was someone who was choosing to see past her own prejudices, past her father's warnings, past everything she'd been taught about people like him. "Why are you being so nice to me?" he asked. "Because when you touched my hand, I felt alive for the first time in 18 months, she said simply. "And because watching you tonight, you don't just help people, River, you see them, really see them. Do you know how rare that is?" Around them, the shelter hummed with quiet conversations, crying babies, and the steady drumming of rain against the windows. But in their small corner, something was shifting, walls coming down, possibilities opening up. "I'm scared," River admitted quietly. "Of what?" "Of hoping for something I can't have, of believing this," he gestured between them, "is real when tomorrow you'll go back to your world and I'll go back to mine." Lily reached out and gently took his hand, the same hand that had first touched hers 3 days ago. This time, the warmth that flowed between them felt less like magic and more like recognition. "Then maybe," she said softly, "we need to figure out how to build a world that has room for both of us." Outside, the storm continued to rage. But inside the crowded, noisy community center, 2 people from completely different worlds discovered they shared the same hope that love could bridge any distance, heal any wound, and transform any life if they were brave enough to let it. The storm had passed by dawn, but the shelter remained crowded as city crews worked to restore power and clear flooded streets. River and Lily had spent the night taking turns watching over the elderly and sick, catching fragments of sleep when they could. Now, in the gray morning light filtering through the community center's windows, they sat together in a quiet corner while the chaos of departure swirled around them. Most evacuees were heading home, but neither River nor Lily seemed eager to leave this fragile bubble where their different worlds had somehow coexisted. "Your father's probably worried sick," River said, watching Lily check her phone for the dozenth time. 15 missed calls, she confirmed. "But the cell towers are still down in some areas. He might not even know I'm safe." River studied her face. "You're not rushing to call him back." "No," she met his eyes. "I'm not." The admission hung between them, loaded with implications neither was ready to address directly. "Can I ask you something?" Lily said suddenly. "Last night, when you were helping people, it wasn't the first time, was it? This gift of yours." River was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. "I was 13 when it started." "What happened?" River stared at his hands. Those same hands that had brought comfort to so many people the night before. "My family lived in the Riverside projects. Mom worked 2 jobs. Dad was trying to get his contracting business off the ground. My little sister Carmen was 8. His voice caught on her name. She was God. She was everything good in the world, you know? Always laughing, always finding something to be excited about." Lily waited, sensing the weight of what was coming. There was a shooting, gang violence. Wrong place, wrong time. River's hands clenched into fists. Carmen got caught in the crossfire. Mom threw herself over her, trying to protect her. Dad died trying to get them both to safety. "River," Lily breathed. "I wasn't even there. I was at school, in detention for talking back to a teacher. While I was sitting in some classroom feeling sorry for myself, my whole family was bleeding out on a sidewalk 6 blocks away." Tears were streaming down his face now, but he continued. "By the time I got to the hospital, she was so small in that bed. All those machines. The doctors said there was nothing they could do, just wait. But I couldn't just wait, you know? I couldn't lose her too. So you touched her, Lily said softly, understanding. I grabbed her hand and I prayed harder than I'd ever prayed for anything, and something happened. This warmth, like electricity but softer. She opened her eyes. River's voice broke. For just a minute she opened her eyes and smiled at me and said, "It's okay, River. I'm not scared anymore." Did she? She died an hour later. Peaceful, like she was just going to sleep, River wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. The doctors called it a miracle that she wasn't in pain at the end, but I knew what had really happened. Lily reached for his hand, and this time the warmth that passed between them felt like shared grief rather than healing. That's when you ended up on the streets? Foster care for a while, but I kept running away, kept trying to get back to our old neighborhood. Social services gave up eventually. He shrugged, trying for nonchalance and failing. Been on my own ever since. 4 years, Lily said quietly. You've been alone for 4 years. Not alone. I help people. It's like Carmen's still with me when I do it. Like maybe her dying wasn't completely pointless if I can use this thing to help others. The raw honesty of his words made Lily's chest tight. Here was this young man who'd lost everything, who had every reason to be angry and bitter, and instead he spent his days caring for strangers whose society had discarded. Now you know why I can't. River gestured vaguely between them. Why I can't let myself hope for normal things. Everyone I've ever loved dies, Lily finished softly. I understand that fear. Do you? She was quiet for a moment, gathering courage she didn't know she possessed. The accident, she said finally. It wasn't really an accident. River's attention sharpened. What do you mean? I was angry. At my father, at the pressure, at everything. I'd just gotten my MCAT scores back, perfect score, early admission to 3 top medical schools. I should have been celebrating, but all I could think about was how I'd never measure up to him. Doctor Jonathan Carter, the miracle surgeon, the man who could fix anyone. Her voice grew distant, lost in memory. We'd had a fight that morning. About my future, about following in his footsteps. He said medicine was a calling, that I had a responsibility to use my gifts to help people. But I didn't want to help people. I wanted to live my own life, make my own choices. So you left. I got in my car and drove. Fast. Too fast. I was crying, not really paying attention. Lily's hands trembled as she spoke. There was a family broken down on the highway. A father trying to change a tire while his wife held their baby on the side of the road. River's blood ran cold, sensing where this was going. I saw them too late, swerved to avoid hitting them. The car rolled 4 times. Lily's voice was mechanical now, reciting facts to keep the emotions at bay. 12. Complete spinal cord injury. The doctors said if I'd hit that family, if I'd been going just a little bit faster, but you didn't hit them. No, but I destroyed my father's dream, the son he never had, the legacy he wanted to build. He'd spent my whole life preparing me to be a doctor, and in one moment of selfishness, I took that away from him. Lily, that's not. He's never said it, she continued, but I see it in his eyes every day. The disappointment, the waste. He looks at me and sees everything he lost when I chose my anger over responsibility. River stared at her, understanding flooding his features. That's why you won't try the physical therapy. You think you deserve this. Don't I? The words came out as a whisper. I was so focused on rebelling against him that I nearly killed innocent people. A baby, River. I could have killed a baby because I was having a tantrum about my privileged life. And you've been punishing yourself ever since. Lily nodded, tears flowing freely now. My father saves lives. You save lives, and me? I destroy everything I touch. That's not true. Isn't it? Look what's happening between us. I'm going to ruin this too, just like I ruin everything else. River was quiet for a long moment, processing everything she'd shared. Then he did something that surprised them both. He laughed, not mockingly, but with a kind of wounded recognition. You know what's funny? We're both running from the same thing. What do you mean? Love, connection, the possibility that we might matter to someone. River's eyes met hers. I tell myself I can't love anyone because everyone I love dies. You tell yourself you don't deserve love because you made one mistake that hurt no one but yourself. It's not the same. It's exactly the same. We're both so scared of causing pain that we've decided to live without joy. River's voice grew stronger. But what if we're wrong? What if the universe didn't bring us together so we could protect each other from happiness? What if it brought us together so we could learn we're worth saving? The question hung between them like a bridge, fragile but real. Around them, the last of the evacuees were gathering their belongings, returning to lives temporarily disrupted but fundamentally unchanged. But for River and Lily, nothing would ever be the same again. They'd shared their deepest wounds, their most carefully guarded secrets, and instead of driving them apart, the truth had created something neither expected: recognition, not just of their pain, but of their shared capacity for healing, both others and themselves. The question now was whether they had the courage to believe in that possibility. 3 days after the storm, River found Lily exactly where he'd hoped he wouldn't, sitting in her wheelchair outside the community center, clearly waiting for him. He'd been avoiding this area since the shelter closed, knowing that seeing her again would make it impossible to pretend their connection was just a product of crisis and proximity. But there she was, wearing jeans instead of her usual expensive clothes, her dark hair pulled back in a simple ponytail that made her look younger, more approachable. "Stalking me now?" River asked, trying for casual humor to cover his racing heart. "Hardly." Lily gestured to the book in her lap. "I volunteer here now, teaching GED prep classes." River stopped walking. "Since when?" "Since I realized I've been wasting my education feeling sorry for myself." She met his eyes. "Someone recently reminded me that just because you can't do exactly what you planned doesn't mean you can't do anything meaningful." The reference to their conversation made his chest tight. "Lily, the classes are Tuesdays and Thursdays. If you're interested." She tried to sound casual, but he could hear the hope underneath. River looked at the community center, then back at her. Everything logical told him to walk away, but the part of him that had been drawn to her from the first moment was stronger than logic. "What time?" he asked. Her smile could have powered the entire building. 2 weeks later, River was bent over a geometry worksheet, his pencil moving hesitantly across problems that should have been simple but felt impossible after 4 years away from formal education. "You're overthinking it," Lily said softly, wheeling her chair closer to his desk. The other students had left an hour ago, but River had asked to stay for extra help. "Story of my life," he muttered, erasing his answer for the 3rd time. Here, Lily moved beside him, close enough that he could smell her shampoo, something clean and expensive that reminded him of the vast distance between their worlds. "Don't think about the formula, just look at the shape. What do you see?" River studied the triangle, acutely aware of her proximity. 3 sides, 3 angles. "Good. Now what do you know about triangles from real life? Not from textbooks, from fixing things, building things." He considered this, his practical experience suddenly clicking into place. The angles always add up to the same thing. Like, if you're bracing something, you need the weight distributed evenly, or it falls apart. Exactly. Lily's excitement was infectious. You already understand this. You just need to trust what you know. River worked through the problem again, this time letting his instincts guide him instead of fighting with half-remembered formulas. When the answer came out right, his grin was brilliant. See? You're smarter than you think. Lily's voice was warm with pride. Good teacher, River replied, but he was looking at her, not the worksheet. The moment stretched between them, charged with possibilities neither was ready to name. Then Lily cleared her throat and moved back to a more appropriate distance. We should probably, the center closes soon. But neither of them moved to leave. Can I ask you something? River said finally. Why are you really doing this? The teaching, I mean. Lily was quiet for so long he thought she wouldn't answer. When she did, her voice was thoughtful, honest. Because when I watch you learn, I remember why I wanted to be a doctor in the first place. Not for my father, not for prestige, but because there's something beautiful about helping people discover they're capable of more than they believed. Even if the person you're helping is just a street kid with a record? Especially then. Lily turned to face him fully. You want to know what I see when I look at you, River? I see someone who's survived things that would break most people and still chooses kindness. I see healing hands and a brilliant mind that's been denied every opportunity but refuses to give up. I see what? I see the kind of doctor I wish I could have been. The honesty in her voice made River's throat tight. You still could be. Your legs don't define your ability to heal people. Says the boy who heals people with his touch. That's different. River struggled for words. That's not me, really. It's something that happens through me. But what you do, the way you see people, the way you make them feel worthy of care, that's all you. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, textbooks and worksheets forgotten. Tell me something, Lily said suddenly. What did you want to be when you were little, before everything happened? River smiled at the memory. A veterinarian. I loved animals, thought they were simpler than people, less likely to hurt you. What changed your mind? People turned out to need more help. The simple truth of it made Lily's chest ache. And now, if you could be anything? River looked at his hands, those miracle hands that had brought so much comfort to so many. I used to think I wanted to disappear, just not exist, you know? It seemed easier than trying to figure out where I fit. And now? Now I think maybe I want to matter to someone, for something good. He met her eyes. Crazy, right? Not crazy at all. Lily's voice was soft. You already matter, River, more than you know. To who? To Mrs. Elena, whose arthritis hasn't bothered her since you started checking on her. To the Martinez baby, who stops crying whenever you hold him. To Tommy in our GED class, who's finally starting to believe he's smart enough for college because you helped him with his essay. River stared at her, overwhelmed by her litany of care. To me, Lily added quietly. The words hung in the air between them, a confession that changed everything and nothing all at once. Lily, River's voice was rough with emotion. I know this is complicated. I know we come from different worlds, and I know my father would probably disown me if he knew how I felt about you. She took a shaky breath. But I can't pretend anymore that what's happening between us is just friendship. River felt like he was standing at the edge of a cliff, and she was asking him to jump. What are you saying? I'm saying that when I'm with you, I remember who I used to be before the accident stole my dreams. I'm saying that watching you help people, seeing the way you care about everyone but yourself, makes me want to be better. Lily's eyes were bright with unshed tears. I'm saying I'm falling in love with you, and it terrifies me. River's heart stopped, then started again at double speed. It terrifies you? His laugh was shaky. Lily, I've been homeless for 4 years. I have no family, no money, no future that makes sense on paper. You're brilliant and beautiful and kind, and your father could buy and sell my entire neighborhood. What could you possibly have to be terrified about?" "That this is real," she whispered. "That for the first time since my accident, I want something more than I want to hide. And that wanting it might be enough to make me brave." River reached out and took her hand, that simple touch igniting the warmth they both recognized as something beyond physical attraction, a connection that went soul deep. "What if we were brave together?" he asked. Lily intertwined their fingers, marveling at how perfectly they fit together despite everything that should have kept them apart. "Then maybe," she said softly, "we could build something beautiful." Outside, the sun was setting over a city that had no idea two broken people were slowly becoming whole in the quiet sanctuary of an empty classroom. But inside, surrounded by geometry worksheets and abandoned lesson plans, River and Lily discovered that love didn't always announce itself with fanfare. Sometimes it whispered itself into existence through shared dreams and healing touches, through seeing each other's worth when the rest of the world looked away. Sometimes love was as simple as finding someone who made you want to be brave. The photograph arrived on a Tuesday morning, slipped under Dr. Carter's office door like a poison pill designed to explode his carefully ordered world. In the image, his daughter sat close to a young black man outside the community center, their hands intertwined, both of them laughing at something off camera. The intimacy between them was unmistakable. This wasn't a casual friendship or a chance encounter. This was love. Dr. Carter stared at the photo for a full minute, his surgical hands trembling with a rage so pure it frightened him. Attached to the photograph was a note in anonymous block letters. "Thought you should know what your daughter is really doing with her volunteer work." By the time Lily wheeled herself through the penthouse door that evening, her father was waiting with the photograph laid out on the coffee table like evidence at a trial. "Explain this," he said without preamble. Lily took one look at the photo and felt her stomach drop. She and River, caught in a moment of pure happiness outside the community center. Someone had been watching them, documenting their growing relationship. "Dad, I can explain." "Can you?" "Because what I see here is my daughter, who is supposed to be recovering from a traumatic injury, sneaking around with some street criminal who probably sees her as an easy target." "River isn't a criminal." The words exploded out of Lily with more force than she'd intended. "He's kind and intelligent. He's a homeless drug dealer who's been manipulating you." Dr. Carter's composure finally cracked. "Do you think I haven't done my research? River Santos, age 17, multiple arrests for loitering and theft. No family, no address, no legal guardian. Do you have any idea what people are saying about this?" "What people? Who took this picture?" "That doesn't matter. What matters is that you've been lying to me for weeks, putting yourself in danger with someone who—" "Someone who, what, Dad? Someone who's black? Someone who's poor?" Lily's voice rose to match his. "Just say what you really mean." Dr. Carter's face flushed. "This has nothing to do with race and everything to do with protecting you from someone who clearly has ulterior motives." "Ulterior motives? Like what, stealing my wheelchair? Like getting access to our family's money and connections? Like taking advantage of a vulnerable young woman who's clearly not thinking straight?" The words hit Lily like physical blows. "Vulnerable? Not thinking straight? Is that really what you think of me? I think you're lonely and traumatized, and this boy is smart enough to exploit that. River has never asked me for anything. He's never even been to this building. All he's done is—" "What? Convince you he has some magical healing power?" "Lily, listen to yourself. You're talking like someone who's been brainwashed." "He does have a gift," Lily said quietly. "I've seen it. I've felt it." Dr. Carter's expression shifted from anger to something that looked almost like pity. "Sweetheart, What you felt was the placebo effect. Hope making you imagine sensations that aren't really there. It's a common phenomenon in patients with spinal injuries. Don't you dare patronize me with medical jargon. Lily's voice cracked with fury. I know what I felt, and it was real. What's real is that you've been manipulated by a con artist who probably learned how to fake healing from other street scammers. What's real is that my colleagues are already talking, asking questions about your mysterious recovery sessions with some homeless teenager. Your colleagues. Dr. Morrison saw you with him last week. Said you looked inappropriately intimate with someone who was clearly not from our social circle. Dr. Carter's voice was cold now, clinical. Do you know what this kind of scandal could do to my reputation, to my practice? And there it was. The truth that had been hiding underneath all his protective father rhetoric. This wasn't about her safety or welfare, this was about his image, his standing in their privileged community. There it is, Lily said quietly. The real reason you're upset. Not because you think River might hurt me, but because loving him might embarrass you. That's not. It's exactly that. Lily's voice was steady now, deadly calm. You're ashamed of me. First because I got paralyzed and ruined your perfect daughter. Now because I fell in love with someone who doesn't fit your country club standards. I am not ashamed of you, Dr. Carter said, but the words rang false even to his own ears. Then prove it. Meet River. Talk to him. See what I see. Absolutely not. Why? Afraid you might discover he's not the monster you've made him out to be. Dr. Carter picked up the photograph and held it like a weapon. I'm forbidding you to see him again. Forbidding me? Lily laughed, but there was no humor in it. I'm 22 years old, Dad. You can't forbid me to do anything. I can cut off your trust fund. I can have security ban him from this building. I can call the police and report him for harassment. You wouldn't. Try me. They stared at each other across a gulf that felt unbridgeable. Father and daughter, doctor and patient, representative of two worlds that had suddenly declared war. If you make me choose, Lily said quietly, you might not like my answer. If you choose him over your family, you'll have nothing. No money, no support, no safety net. Is some teenage infatuation really worth throwing away everything you've ever had? The question hung in the air like a guillotine blade, waiting to fall. Have you ever had to choose between love and family approval? Sometimes the people who claim to protect us are really protecting themselves. What would you do in Lily's position? 3 miles away, River was stocking shelves at the corner store where he'd recently found part-time work when his phone buzzed with a text from Lily, "Need to see you. Meet me at the usual place." Something in the urgent tone made his stomach clench, but he finished his shift and walked to their regular meeting spot, a quiet bench in Riverside Park where they'd been spending their evenings talking about books and dreams and impossible futures. He found her there already, but something was wrong. Her posture was rigid, her eyes red-rimmed from crying. When she looked up at him, her expression was guarded in a way that made his heart race with dread. "We need to talk," she said. River sat down beside her, every instinct screaming that whatever came next was going to shatter him. "My father knows about us," Lily said without preamble. "Okay." River's voice was carefully neutral. "How did he?" "Someone took pictures. Sent them to him with a note about what I'm really doing with my volunteer work." Lily's hands were clenched in her lap. He's not happy." "I can imagine." River studied her face, looking for clues about what this meant for them. "What did you tell him?" "The truth, that you're kind and intelligent, and that I love you." River's heart lifted for a split second before crashing back down at her tone. "But he thinks you're using me, for money, for connections, for, I don't know. Whatever reason, rich people think poor people do anything." River felt something cold and familiar settling in his chest, the old armor of cynicism and self-protection that he'd let Lily strip away over the past weeks. "And what do you think?" The question caught Lily off guard. "What do you mean?" "I mean, when your father laid out all the logical reasons why someone like me might manipulate someone like you, what did you think?" "I defended you." "That's not what I asked." River's voice was quiet, but there was an edge to it that hadn't been there before. "I asked what you thought." In that moment when he was listing all the ways I don't measure up to your world, did you wonder if he might be right? Lily stared at him, recognizing the trap but unable to avoid it, because the terrible truth was, for just a moment, one horrible, shameful moment, she had wondered. Not about his motives, but about whether love could really bridge such an impossible gap. Her hesitation was answer enough. River nodded slowly, understanding flooding his features. "Right, so what's the verdict? Do I get the 'it's not you, it's me' speech, or are we skipping straight to 'we come from different worlds'? That's not fair." "Isn't it?" River stood up, pacing to the edge of their little sanctuary. "Come on, Lily, your father's right about one thing, this was always temporary. You slumming it with the interesting poor kid until real life called you back." "How can you say that?" Lily's voice broke. "After everything we've shared, everything we've built, what have we built?" River turned to face her, and his expression was colder than she'd ever seen it. "A few weeks of playing house while you figured out whether you were brave enough to disappoint Daddy? That's not what this was. Wasn't it? Because here you are, choosing him over me just like I knew you would." "I never said I was choosing him." "You didn't have to say it." River's voice was quiet now, deadly calm. "It's written all over your face. The minute he threatened to cut you off, to take away your safety net, you started doing the math. Homeless boyfriend versus trust fund, street kid versus family approval, and guess what? I lost." Tears were streaming down Lily's face now. "You're putting words in my mouth." "Am I? Then choose. Right now. Tell your father you're with me and you don't care what he thinks. Move out of his penthouse, live on your own, build something real with me." "It's not that simple." "It's exactly that simple." River's voice was raw with pain. "But you can't do it, can you? Because at the end of the day, I'm just the charity case who made you feel good about yourself for a few weeks." "That's not true." "Then prove it." The silence stretched between them like a chasm. Lily opened her mouth several times, but no words came. Every argument died in her throat because they both knew that she couldn't do what he was asking. She couldn't walk away from everything she'd ever known for a love that might not survive the reality of their different worlds. River nodded, his face shutting down completely. "That's what I thought." He turned to walk away, but Lily's voice stopped him. "River, please. We can find another way. We can be careful, keep it quiet until—" "Until what? Until you're ashamed enough of me to end it anyway?" River's laugh was bitter. "No thanks. I've spent 4 years learning not to hope for things I can't have. I should have remembered that lesson. Don't do this, please. You're the best thing that's ever happened to me." "And you're the worst thing that's ever happened to me," River said quietly, "because for a few weeks you made me believe I could be worth loving." The words hit Lily like a physical blow. "You are worth loving. Not to you. Not when it matters. Not when it costs you something." He walked away then, leaving her alone on the bench where they'd shared so many dreams. Lily called after him, but her voice was lost in the evening traffic. By the time she made it back to the penthouse, her father was waiting with a satisfied expression and legal documents already drawn up. "I've had a restraining order prepared," he said. "If he comes near you again, he'll be arrested." Lily stared at the papers, then at her father, seeing him clearly for perhaps the first time in her life. You've destroyed the only real happiness I've found since the accident. I've protected you from making the biggest mistake of your life. Have you? Or have you protected yourself from having a son-in-law who doesn't look good at charity galas?" Dr. Carter's silence was answer enough. That night, Lily lay in her expensive bed in her expensive room and wondered if River was right. Had she really been slumming it? Had their love been real, or had she just been playing at rebellion until the cost became too high? 3 miles away, River sat on the floor of his warehouse shelter, staring at his hands, the same hands that had brought so much healing to others but couldn't heal the one wound that mattered most. The wound of believing he could be enough for someone who lived in a different world. Both of them fell asleep wondering if they'd just lost the only real love they'd ever known, or if they'd simply woken up from a beautiful dream that was never meant to last. 5 days passed like years. Lily moved through her routine, like a ghost haunting her own life. Physical therapy sessions she didn't participate in. Meals she didn't taste. Conversations with her father that felt like negotiations between strangers. The penthouse, with its pristine surfaces and perfect views, felt more like a mausoleum than a home. She'd stopped going to the community center. Stopped teaching, stopped pretending that helping others could fill the river-shaped hole in her chest. "You're doing the right thing," Dr. Carter said, over breakfast on the 6th day, his voice carrying the forced cheer of someone trying to convince himself as much as her. "In a few weeks, you'll see that this was all just a phase, a reaction to your trauma." Lily looked up from the untouched eggs on her plate. "Is that your professional opinion, doctor?" "It's my opinion as your father." "And what about your opinion as someone who supposedly loves me?" Dr. Carter set down his coffee cup, studying her with the clinical detachment he used with difficult patients. "I do love you. That's why I did what I had to do." "What you had to do?" Lily repeated the words slowly, tasting their bitter flavor. "Tell me, Dad, when you were growing up poor, when you were the scholarship kid who didn't belong, did anyone ever tell you that your dreams were just a phase?" Her father's face tightened. "That's completely different." "Is it? Or are you just more comfortable being the one doing the excluding now, instead of being excluded?" The silence that followed was so thick, Lily could practically touch it. "I'm going out," she said finally, wheeling toward the elevator. "Where?" "Does it matter? You've made it clear I'm not capable of making my own decisions." The elevator doors closed on her father's protests, but Lily barely heard them. For the first time in days, she had a destination in mind. 3 miles away, River was boxing up his few possessions in the abandoned warehouse. Mrs. Elena sat nearby, watching with worried eyes as he folded his extra shirt into a plastic bag. "Where will you go, Micho?" "South, maybe. Atlanta. I heard there's work there." River's voice was flat, emotionless. He'd spent 6 days perfecting that tone. "And the girl?" River's hands stilled. "What girl?" "Don't play dumb with me. The one who's been making you smile for weeks. The one who taught you to hope for something better." "She made her choice." River resumed his packing, each movement sharp with suppressed pain. "Rich girls always choose their world over ours in the end." "Do they? Or do scared boys sometimes run away before anyone has to choose?" The observation hit too close to home. River turned to face Mrs. Elena, his composure cracking. "You don't understand. Her father is afraid, just like you're afraid. Just like she's probably afraid." Mrs. Elena's weathered hands reached out to still his frantic packing. "Fear makes people do stupid things, but it doesn't have to be permanent." She hesitated. The words came out broken. Of course she hesitated. You asked her to throw away everything she'd ever known for a love that's barely had time to grow roots. Mrs. Elena's voice was gentle but firm. That's not choosing, that's jumping off a cliff blindfolded. So what was I supposed to do? Wait around while she figured out if I was worth the risk? You were supposed to fight for her, for both of you. River stared at the old woman, his carefully constructed walls beginning to crumble. What if I fight and lose anyway? What if you don't fight and spend the rest of your life wondering what might have been? 20 minutes later, Lily sat in her wheelchair outside the community center, staring at the building where she'd found purpose again, where she'd found River. She'd told herself she was just saying goodbye, but that was a lie. She was hoping desperately, foolishly hoping, that he might be there. That maybe they could find a way to bridge the impossible gap between their worlds. But the center was closed, and River was nowhere to be seen. He's not here. Lily turned to find a middle-aged Latina woman approaching, someone she recognized from the shelter during the storm. Mrs. Elena? See, you're the teacher. The one River talks about. Elena's smile was sad but knowing. He's leaving, you know, tonight. Lily's heart clenched. Leaving for where? Away. Somewhere he thinks won't hurt so much. Elena studied Lily's face. He thinks you chose your father over him. I didn't know what to choose. And now? The simple question hung in the air between them. Lily looked at the community center, then at her expensive clothes and custom wheelchair, then at her hands, hands that had touched Rivers and felt something impossible come to life. Now I think I've been a coward, she whispered. Cowards can become brave, Elena said softly, but only if they choose to. River was loading the last of his things into a borrowed shopping cart when his phone buzzed. A text from a number he didn't recognize. Your friend at the warehouse gave me your number. We need to talk. Please don't leave. He stared at the message for a full minute, his heart hammering against his ribs. Every logical part of his brain screamed at him to ignore it, to stick to his plan, to get out before she could hurt him again. But the part of him that remembered her laugh, her gentle touch, her tears when she'd told him about her accident, that part was already walking toward the warehouse entrance. He found her there 10 minutes later, sitting in her wheelchair just outside the building. She looked smaller somehow, more fragile than he'd ever seen her. But her eyes, when they met his, were filled with a determination that made his breath catch. You came, she said softly. You asked me to. I did more than ask. Lily took a shaky breath. I chose. River felt something shift inside his chest, a crack in the armor he'd built around his heart. What are you saying? I'm saying I told my father that I love you, and if he can't accept that, then he'll have to learn to live with disappointment. Her voice grew stronger with each word. I'm saying I moved out of the penthouse an hour ago. All my stuff is in a storage unit downtown. Lily, River's voice was rough with disbelief. I'm saying I don't have much to offer you. No trust fund, no family support, no safety net, just me and whatever we can build together. Tears were streaming down her face, but her voice never wavered. And I'm saying that if you still want me, if you still think I'm worth the risk, then I'm ready to jump off that cliff with you. River stared at her, this brave, impossible woman who'd just given up everything she'd ever known for the chance at something real. What about your father, your future? My father will come around, or he won't. As for my future, Lily reached out her hand to him. I'd rather build it with you than inherit one without you. River looked at her outstretched hand, then at her face, open, vulnerable, offering him everything she had. He thought about all the reasons this could still go wrong, all the ways their different worlds could tear them apart, all the obstacles they'd face as an interracial couple navigating poverty and prejudice together. Then he thought about the warmth that flowed between them when they touched, about her laugh in the community center classroom, about the way she saw his worth when the rest of the world looked through him. River reached out and took her hand. The moment their skin connected, that familiar warmth bloomed between them, but this time it felt different, stronger, less like magic, and more like promise. "Are you sure about this?" he asked quietly. "Because once we do this, once we're really together, I won't let you go again." Lily smiled through her tears, the first real smile she'd managed in a week. "I'm counting on it." They sat there in the fading daylight, two people from impossible worlds who'd chosen love over fear, hope over safety, each other over everything else. The choice was made. Now came the hard part, building a life together. But for the first time since they'd met, both River and Lily believed it was possible. 6 months later. The small apartment they shared in the Arts District wasn't much, a converted loft above a used bookstore with creaky floors and windows that didn't quite seal against the winter cold. But as River watched Lily grade papers at their second-hand kitchen table, her face illuminated by the warm glow of their thrift store lamp, he thought it was the most beautiful place on earth. "Mrs. Rodriguez's son got into community college," Lily announced, looking up from her stack of GED practice tests. "Full scholarship. The kid who thought he was too stupid to learn?" River smiled from where he stood at the stove, stirring the soup that had become their Tuesday night tradition. "The same one. Turns out he just needed someone to believe in him." River brought 2 bowls to the table and sat across from her, marveling as he did every day at the simple miracle of sharing a meal with someone who loved him. The transition hadn't been easy. Lily's trust fund was indeed frozen, and Dr. Carter had made good on his threat to cut off financial support. For the first month, they'd survived on River's part-time wages and the small stipend Lily earned teaching GED classes. They'd eaten a lot of pasta and learned to find joy in free museum days and walks through the park. But gradually, their world had expanded. Lily had found work as a tutor for students with learning disabilities, her natural teaching abilities and newfound understanding of overcoming obstacles making her unexpectedly effective. River had enrolled in high school equivalency classes and was already talking about college applications. More importantly, they'd found their shared purpose. "Dr. Chen called today," River said carefully, watching Lily's reaction. "About the pilot program." Lily set down her fork, hope and anxiety warring in her expression. Dr. Sarah Chen was a neurologist at the free clinic who'd become intrigued by River's abilities after witnessing him calm a patient's chronic pain during a chance encounter. "And she wants to start next month. Official medical supervision, controlled environment, documented results." River reached across the table to take Lily's hand. "She thinks what I do might be real, scientifically measurable." "Of course it's real." Lily squeezed his fingers. "The question is whether the medical establishment is ready to admit it." The pilot program was their dream, a chance to study River's gift in a clinical setting to potentially help patients who'd exhausted traditional treatments. But it was also terrifying, exposing something precious and mysterious to the harsh light of scientific scrutiny. "What if they can't explain it?" River asked. "What if they decide I'm a fraud after all? Then we'll know we tried, and we'll find other ways to help people." Lily's voice carried the quiet confidence that had become his anchor in moments of doubt. "Besides, I have a theory." "Oh." "I think your gift isn't about healing bodies. I think it's about healing spirits. Helping people remember they're worthy of care, of hope, of love." She smiled. "The physical improvements might just be a side effect of believing in themselves again." River considered this, remembering Mrs. Elena's arthritis, the man having the heart attack, the countless small moments when his touch had brought comfort rather than cure. Speaking of healing spirits, River pulled an envelope from his jacket pocket. "This came today." Lily recognized her father's handwriting immediately, and her breath caught. They'd had no contact since she'd moved out, despite her attempts to reach out. Dr. Carter had made his position clear. As long as she was with River, she was no longer his daughter. "Do you want me to open it?" River asked gently. Lily nodded, not trusting her voice. River unfolded the single sheet of paper and read aloud. "Lily, I've been doing research on your young man. His juvenile record shows arrests for theft, but the details tell a different story. Food, medicine, winter coats. Never for himself, always for other homeless individuals. The social worker's notes describe him as fiercely protective of vulnerable populations and recommend counseling, not punishment. I also spoke with Dr. Chen about the work he's been doing at the clinic. She says his bedside manner is remarkable, that patients ask for him specifically. She's never seen anything like his intuitive understanding of pain and healing. I may have been wrong about his character. I was certainly wrong about his intentions toward you. But I was not wrong about my fears. You are my daughter, my heart walking around outside my body, and watching you choose a life of struggle when I could provide for you, it nearly broke me. However, watching you these past months, seeing you find purpose in teaching, seeing you choose love over comfort, I realize you've become the doctor I always hoped you'd be, just not in the way I expected. If you're willing, I'd like to meet him properly. Not as a father protecting his territory, but as a man hoping to understand what my daughter sees in someone she loves enough to sacrifice everything for. I miss you. We both know I'm too proud to beg, but I'm asking, please come home for dinner Sunday. Both of you. Love, Dad. P.S. Mies. I've been funding a scholarship program for disadvantaged students pursuing medical careers. River's name is already on the list for next fall, if he's interested." Lily was crying before River finished reading, tears of relief and joy and cautious hope streaming down her face. "He wants to meet you," she whispered. "Really meet you. Are you ready for that? Are you?" River thought about the scared, angry man who'd threatened him with police and restraining orders. Then he thought about a father who'd spent 6 months researching his daughter's boyfriend, looking for evidence not of threat but of worth. "Yeah, I think I am." Sunday dinner at Dr. Carter's penthouse was awkward at first, conversations stilted and careful. But River's genuine interest in Dr. Carter's work and his thoughtful questions about surgical techniques slowly broke down the barriers. When Dr. Carter mentioned a particularly challenging case, a young girl with a spinal injury similar to Lily's, River listened intently. "The family is devastated," Dr. Carter said quietly. 8 years old, complete paralysis below T10. "Her parents keep asking for miracles I can't provide." River and Lily exchanged a look, one of those wordless conversations that couples develop over time. "What if," River began hesitantly, "what if I could visit her? Not to heal her, but to help her understand she's still whole, still worthy of love and dreams?" Dr. Carter studied River for a long moment, seeing him clearly for perhaps the first time. "I think," he said slowly, "that might be exactly what she needs." 1 year later, the community center was packed for Lily and River's wedding, an eclectic mix of homeless individuals, GED students, medical professionals, and Dr. Carter's colleagues who'd come to understand that love doesn't follow social boundaries. Mrs. Elena officiated, her weathered hands steady as she spoke about 2 people who'd found in each other what the world had told them they couldn't have. When it came time for vows, River took Lily's hands in his, those same hands that had first touched hers in a moment of desperate hope. "A year and a half ago, you were broken and I was lost," he said, his voice carrying across the hushed room. "But when I touched your hand and said, 'Let me try,' something extraordinary happened. Not healing, transformation. You taught me I was worthy of love, and I helped you remember you were worthy of hope." Lily's response echoed the promise they'd been living. "I choose you, not because you can heal my body, but because you helped heal my spirit. Not because our love is easy, but because it's real, not because our worlds match, but because our hearts do. When they kissed, sealing promises that had been tested by prejudice and poverty and fear, something extraordinary happened. Lily felt it first. A tingling in her legs that was different from anything she'd experienced since the accident. Not the phantom sensations that sometimes tormented her, but actual feeling. She gasped against River's lips, and he felt it too, that familiar warmth, but stronger than it had ever been, flowing between them like electricity. "River," she whispered, "I can feel, I think I can." With his hands supporting her and 200 witnesses holding their breath, Lily Carter Santos stood up from her wheelchair for the first time in over 2 years. The room erupted in gasps and tears and spontaneous applause, but River and Lily only had eyes for each other. "How?" she whispered, her legs shaking but holding her weight. "Maybe," River said softly, "some miracles take time to grow. Maybe love has to be tested before it becomes strong enough to move mountains or heal spines." Dr. Carter pushed through the crowd, his medical mind warring with the evidence of his eyes. But when he reached his daughter, standing, laughing, crying, supported by the young man he'd once tried to drive away, science took a back seat to joy. "Welcome to the family," he told River, and meant it. 5 years later, the Santos Clinic opened in the same building where Lily and River had first taught GED classes. A partnership between traditional medicine and alternative healing, it served the underserved with a combination of clinical expertise and something harder to quantify: hope. Dr. Lily Santos, who'd completed her medical degree with the help of her father's connections and her husband's unwavering support, specialized in spinal injuries and trauma recovery. River, who'd earned his certification as a therapeutic touch practitioner, worked with patients who'd given up on conventional treatment. Together, they'd helped dozens of people reclaim their lives, not all through miraculous physical healing, but through the more common miracle of believing in yourself again. On quiet evenings, they'd sit in their small office and marvel at the journey that had brought them here. Two broken people who'd found wholeness in each other, who'd built something beautiful from the ashes of everything they'd thought they wanted. "Any regrets?" River would sometimes ask, usually on nights when the bills were tight and the work was hard. "Only one," Lily would always answer, "that I waited so long to let you try." And in those moments, surrounded by thank you cards from patients and photos of the family they'd built together, not just the two of them, but the extended community of healers and helpers they'd gathered around themselves, they knew that some fairy tales were worth the struggle. Love at last wasn't just about finding each other. It was about becoming the people they were meant to be, together. What's the most unexpected place love has found you? Sometimes the most beautiful relationships come from the most unlikely beginnings. Share your story of love defying the odds below. We'd love to hear how you found your own miracle.
Our emotional journey is complete. River and Lily found their happy ending through love that conquered prejudice, fear, and social barriers. Their story echoes the opening "let me try" moment with the ultimate healing miracle, and shows how unexpected love can transform not just individuals but entire communities. What an incredible emotional journey. Were you satisfied with how their love story unfolded? If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as crazier and more intriguing as you can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one. Thank you for watching this story to the end.